So as we move along through the season and we get closer to 2021, that also means that we're going to be seeing more mock drafts for the NFL draft in 2021, and that includes players like Kyle Pitts. Now, where he belongs in the draft is still up for debate, but I think a lot of people have been currently, or at least recently, settled on him being a first round pick. Now, a lot of drafts that we've seen recently, and there is recency bias, of course, include him as a first round pick with a swirl of other quarterbacks being Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, who a lot of people recognize as basically the top three. Zach Wilson has recently entered the chat as a potential top 10 selection, maybe usurping that number three spot from Trey Lance himself. And then we also have the two outliers right now in Mac Jones and Kyle Trask, who are definitely getting Heisman consideration and also looking to maybe be in the late 20s or back end of the first round, potentially early day two draft picks. So, with having that been all said, we're going to turn our attention or focus today to Kyle Trask, the senior quarterback from Florida, weighing in at 240 pounds, depending on what website you check, and standing tall at a decent 6'5". Very, very thickly built, tall quarterback. Did I just say thickly built? That's a weird expression I never thought I'd say. So anyway, I digress. Going over the statistics from his 3 years here at Florida, he's a redshirt senior. He was not expected really to be the starting quarterback for the Florida Gators. That he was sort of looked at as maybe a career backup, and I think there were those out there that were questioning his motivation, where if he wasn't going to break through or didn't, really seem poised to break through, given the fact that he wasn't a starter even in high school. It's just one of those things. Depending on which reports you read and which journalists you follow, you tend to come across that narrative. So in 2018, he only appears in 3 games, 14 of 22, 63.6 completion percentage, 162 yards, a touchdown, 140.5 QB rating. Very limited exposure, but did what he could in that limited time. 2019, he ends up taking over as the starting quarterback, appears in 12 games, 237 for 354, 66.9 completion percentage, 2,941 yards, 25 touchdowns, 7 picks, QB rating of 156.1. Enter 2020, where things have taken off like a rocket ship. Throws 6 touchdowns in his first game. And at this point in the season, we're wondering just how much more he can accomplish in this offense. 5 games so far this season, 125 for 182. That is good for 4th and 5th in the SEC, respectively. 68.7 completion percentage. That's good for 4th in the SEC. 1,805 yards to this point. That is 3rd in the SEC. 22 touchdowns. That is 1st in both the SEC and the NCAA as a whole. So he leads the country in touchdown passes as of this recording. 3 interceptions on top of that, 189.0 quarterback rating. Last game against Georgia, they ended up smacking their rival. He goes 30 for 43, 474 yards, throws 4 touchdowns. So it's basically just, not really rise of the Phoenix, because he's not rising, from a previous failure, if you will. He's just rising simply out of nowhere. And I think there was a lot of eyes focused on him this year because people realized the kind of talent that he had around him. But it's not just the talent around him that makes Kyle Trask good. He's good in his own right. And that is the reason Florida has been successful this year. And that's also the reason why he comes in with some Heisman vote. Now, is he going to win the Heisman Trophy? I don't think so. I think right now the main competition for that award would be Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and potentially Mac Jones, who has kind of gained a little bit of an edge with his statistics and the fact that Trevor Lawrence has had to miss a couple of games due to COVID. But Kyle Trask is definitely a name to consider. And he's definitely a name that is probably going to secure a few votes at the end of the season. So just something to keep in mind. Now, I wanted to sort of, we all know about the games this year in 2020, how those have gone. They've been fantastic to watch. A lot of scoring, a lot of big plays, and so far only 1 L to show for. They're 4-1 on the season. So I wanted to sort of focus on a couple of 2019 games, which is what you see up here on the board in the corner. Going up against Georgia last year, they take the L, but statistically he plays well. He gets 257 yards, 2 touchdowns. Going up against LSU, again another L, but he does play very well. In the loss, Auburn, they get a win, and in the bowl game against Virginia, I wanted to include that as well, given that it was a bowl game. they get the W there and they play really well. And that end of season success has trickled into this year where things have blown up. And he does benefit from having a guy like Kyle Pitts in this offense and Tony as well. Kyle Pitts is a player that I project to go top 15 in the draft next year if the course that we're currently on remains the same. So he'll definitely get drafted before Kyle Trask. But it's not just Pitts and Tony that are the reason for his success, as I said earlier, because one of the things that you find in the scouting reports is he doesn't lock on to those big playmaking players that he has around him that are super talented. He knows they're super talented, but they can also be effective decoys. You take the Georgia game, for example, this year. 474 passing yards. Well, 373 of those passing yards did not go to Kyle Pitts or Tony, so he does spread the ball around. And that is one of those green plus scouting notes up there on the board, is that he's not going to force passes to his uber talented receivers and pass catchers just to make a play. He can dish it out to other players, and as I said, spread the ball around in the offense. Other scouting notes, has a nice deep ball touch, and from the scouting reports that I've read, they really like his overhand throw and release, which allows him to put touch on the deep ball. Formation versatility. I wasn't really sure what to call this, but I read one report where Florida operates out of many various formations, shotgun, pistol, under center. So you're not getting a quarterback that is married to one formation and only has experience running one type of offense. It's not shotgun 24/7. It's not under center 24/7. There's different things that you can do with this guy in an offense in terms of setting pre-snap. So I think offensive coordinators will find that intriguing, as this is a guy that they can bring in who has some versatility in pre-snap formations and moving things around, allowing them to have a more dynamic offensive play calling, playbook, if you will, that will give coordinators a little bit more interest in seeing what they can do. Because coordinators like to be creative, they don't want to be stuck in the mud with a player who can only do one thing very well and then a couple of things not very well. Of course, nobody wants to admit that. Also, in the scouting reports, I looked for some negatives. It's hard to sort of look at his statistical performances and how he's done against SEC competition and come away with negatives. God forbid we criticize people, but it has to be done. One thing that I think that we're going to hear a lot about leading up into the draft is going to be about the starting experience, but he's played well enough where I think that's going to get squashed, if you will. So I think we'll forget about that once the season is over if he keeps on the trajectory that he's currently on. Yes, he wasn't a starter until 2019. 2019 is the first year where he was starting games. Put that into perspective and think about that. But then think about all the success that has followed it, and if it continues that way, that's probably one that we won't hear about, but I'm sure somebody will bring it up. The other most notable defect when it comes to Kyle Trask is his lack of athleticism. You look at the statistics, you're not going to get a running quarterback. This is not a guy who's going to spring free, thanks to really good coverage down the field and get you a first down. Time to time, he might do it, but it's not going to be something that you can rely on. Very statuesque. You take a look at a lot of the game logs and the statistics, you'll see a lot of negative yardage in the running category. So it's not somebody who is going to be uber athletic. He's good in the pocket, which is something that somebody pointed out. He has that sixth sense, if you will, to sense pressure while keeping his eyes downfield to keep plays alive. So, but as far as, hoping that you're going to get somebody that is going to, move the chains with their legs, Kyle Trask is not going to be somebody that you're going to want to sort of, knight in that way. So that is basically an in-depth look at Kyle Trask so far this season in 2020. As we get closer to the draft, we'll, of course, revisit the players that I've done, and we have a lot more on the way. We've done a lot of quarterbacks, so other positional players are coming, guys like Christian Barmore, Caleb Farley, and what have you. So stick around if you enjoy these, and I will see you in the next one.